I am pleased to have as my guest today Sherry Keating of Diabetes Care Consulting. Diabetes Care Consulting specializes in pre-diabetes risk screening for type 2 diabetes prevention. They have the management, education, and personal health coaching. We've invited Sherry here today to give us an idea on how lifestyle changes can start now to reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 58% to 71%. So Sherry, I'm glad you're here today, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, well, thank you first for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about my passion, pre-diabetes. I'm actually a registered nurse for about 34 years. I'm a certified diabetes educator, and I'm also a diabetes prevention program lifestyle coach. I started my company, Diabetes Care Consulting, because when I found out the statistics of pre-diabetes, I knew I had to be part of the solution. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share a few statistics with you.
Sure.
There are 29.1 million people in the U.S. that have diabetes. A quarter of our seniors have diabetes. Age 20 and older, 28.9 million. And the one that's very concerning, over 208,000 adults under 20 have diabetes, and 5,000 per year are diagnosed.
Wow.
So that's the diabetes problem. The pre-diabetes epidemic, there's 86 million that have pre-diabetes, and 90% are unaware. So those people, within 3 to 5 years, if things do not change, they will develop, 30% of them will develop type 2 diabetes. And even in Massachusetts, there are a third of our population that have pre-diabetes, and only 7% are aware. So there is an awareness problem, and so my company's mission is to increase awareness and offer screening and to actually teach the proven lifestyle changes to prevent type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, well, diabetes can be pretty dangerous because it is the leading cause of kidney failure, lower limb amputations, and adult onset blindness.
Yes.
So it is a good idea to probably have tests so that you can find out if you're even close to having diabetes or diabetes 2, whatever.
Absolutely. There is, diabetes, you're right, is a very serious, life-threatening, and costly. It is the number one leading cause that you had mentioned, but also people with diabetes, it damages the small blood vessels and the nerves. And so what happens is they're a higher risk of having a heart attack and a stroke. It causes disabilities in terms of all the complications of diabetes. It affects the small blood vessels, the eyes, kidneys, and the nerves, and then the large blood vessels, which would cause the heart attack and stroke. And people become disabled, they become depressed, their quality of life is less, and they have a 50% higher risk of death from diabetes. Cost of diabetes is extremely expensive for our healthcare system as well as for individuals. $245 billion when it was last estimated in 2012 for annually for diabetes, and individually 2 to 3 times higher cost for a person with diabetes. So it's expensive physically and financially.
Yeah. Well, tell us, I want to say, for instance, I wanted to find out if I had diabetes. What are the symptoms that, first of all, I'd be looking for before I even go to the doctor? I know that I should go for tests and, you know, make sure that I have my blood checked for diabetes. But what are the symptoms if I was like thinking, ooh, this isn't right? What is that?
Okay, the symptoms of type 2 diabetes are that you're thirsty, you're hungry, and you have increased urination, and that's the reason you have those 3 is the way that our body uses insulin. And actually diabetes is caused from insulin resistance. So that means that we make insulin, but our body isn't able to use it properly. And so because it's not able to get into the cell where it's supposed to go, it floats around in our bloodstream. So we become thirsty because we increase our urination for the kidneys to try to get rid of the excess sugar. We get dehydrated, so we become thirsty, and then we become hungry because our cells are starving because the sugar that normally goes in there doesn't get in there. So that's where our source of energy is. So fatigue is another issue. Infections that don't go away. You have chronic infections. It's usually because if it's related to diabetes, because your blood sugar is too high and you can't heal. So if you have those classic symptoms of diabetes, you should definitely be tested. You can be tested for prediabetes. There's actually a website, doihaveprediabetes.org, and you can go and take a 7-question questionnaire made by the American Diabetes Association. It's simple. You just answer it with a number. You add up your score. If you score 5 or more, you're at high risk for having prediabetes. And whether you go to the doctor for symptoms or whether you take a screening test, you should be tested by blood. And there's 3 blood tests that they can take, and based upon the blood test, the results will determine whether you have diabetes or not.
And you can inherit this too, right?
Absolutely, genetically. And the other risk factors for type 2 diabetes are obesity, and it's belly fat. It's people more of the apple shape versus the pear shape. So in other words, if you carry your weight in the middle versus carrying it around your lower half, that's a higher risk. If you have a family history, mother, father, sister, or brother, if you have high blood pressure or being treated for high blood pressure, if you are inactive, and that inactivity leads to that insulin resistance. So if you're inactive less than 3 times a week, if you have pregnancy diabetes when you're pregnant, called gestational diabetes, that's another risk factor. Certain ethnic groups are risk factors for diabetes. So there's a lot of different risk factors, and you can find all that information on the CDC website or the Mass Department of Public Health. There's a lot of resources out there. So it's best to find out if you are at risk and then start making some lifestyle changes to prevent.
I just failed one of them. I'm hungry.
You're hungry? Well, I think it's a combination of symptoms. I'm hungry too, but I don't have diabetes, I know.
Well, I worry about it because my mother's sister has diabetes. Her 2 brothers had it. I think maybe my grandmother on that side had it too. So I'm always conscious that it could happen, and so I make sure that I have tests for that. I always ask, do I have diabetes? And there was a time when I would eat a lot of candy. I would have a Snickers bar, like maybe 8 or 10 of them during the day, and I asked my doctor if I had diabetes because of it, and he said, no, I think you're satisfying a craving. But I was thinking, because I was saying maybe I want the sugar, and I guess that isn't really, taking a lot of sugar doesn't really mean that you have diabetes.
A lot of people think that diabetes is because of just eating sugar. But diabetes really occurs because of a problem with our pancreas. We have cells in the pancreas that make insulin. And because of that insulin resistance, where you're overweight, especially in the middle, if I may say, and call it belly fat, because of that belly fat and because we're inactive, we actually are not using the insulin that our pancreas is making. And it's not able to get into the cell, as I had said before. So what happens is these cells in our pancreas just try to produce more and more insulin to overcome that resistance. And so what happens is, by the time you're diagnosed with diabetes, which can take up to 20 years, you've burnt out about 80% of those insulin-making cells. And so when you're not making enough insulin, that that leads to diabetes. So the problem is that there's multiple types of diabetes. There's type 1, which your pancreas no longer makes insulin at all. So you rely solely on insulin as a treatment. There's type 2, which is usually lifestyles that lead to type 2 diabetes. And the problem is, it used to be a disease of the older generation, but now as our kids are more sedentary and the way that we live our lives fast food and not eating healthy foods, it's trickling down and getting younger and younger.
Oh.
And then there's diabetes induced by pregnancy hormones.
I see.
But the women that have diabetes, we call gestational diabetes, that's diabetes in pregnancy, they are actually at a higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes later in life, so they need to be screened carefully.
People should make it a very important test to have at least now and then. They don't have to have it every time they go to the doctor, right? But you should do it, how about like once a year or
Well,
more?
actually, the Diabetes Association just came out with the new 2017 Standards of Care for Diabetes, and it's saying anyone over 45 should be screened for diabetes. And then if you don't have any symptoms, and that's anyone, regardless, over 45.
Okay.
If you don't have symptoms, but you of any age and you have you're obese and you have one or more of those risk factors we talked about, you should be screened. And then children and adolescents, if they're obese and they have 2 of those risk factors, they should be screened. So there's specific screening guidelines that doctors should be following so that nothing is missed, because it's such an important disease, and if we can treat it before you get type 2 diabetes, that's better.
Yeah. And you think that the risk, if you have the right lifestyle, you could reduce the risk by 58 to 71%. That's a lot.
Exactly, and it's not my thinking, it's actually proven.
Right.
The diabetes prevention study, it was in 1997 to 99, they actually studied, they had about 3,200 people. They put them in 3 different programs. And what their goal was to set out was to see if between lifestyle changes or metformin, which is a diabetic medication, can either of those prevent or reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So they studied this over a 3-year period of time. They actually cut the study short because they had such phenomenal data that they found that through intensive lifestyle changes that they could actually reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 58%. And the people that in the study that were over 60, it was 71% that they could reduce their risk of developing type 2 diabetes. The metformin part of the study was 34%. So metformin, there is a role for people that are under 60, people that are overweight, and people that may have had diabetes in pregnancy. Metformin may be an option along with lifestyle changes. So it is proven that lifestyle changes absolutely can decrease your risk significantly.
How do you get someone to start? Say, for instance, my age, maybe even younger is hard. But when you get to be my age and you have kind of, I like this and I like that, and what do you mean shouldn't eat that? How do you convince them to, do a lifestyle change? How can you talk them into it?
Well, first of all, you can't talk anyone into anything. I truly believe they have to find their own motivation. I always ask my patients when I meet with them, what is your why? Why are you doing this? I think education is the key, because if you don't understand the significance of having type 2 diabetes and that there are proven studies that show lifestyle change can reduce your risk significantly. So I think education is the number one, and that's what my company is trying to do, is to go out and to go to different areas and to talk to people about this problem, and then actually show them the data and teach them what they can do. So I think that in terms of your question, I think that education is key, and then people need to find their motivation. What is their why? Why is it important for them in their particular life to prevent type 2 diabetes? Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they have a parent or they know someone in their life that's had diabetes that have really had a lot of consequences and long-term complications of diabetes. Maybe that's their why. Maybe, they financially don't want to have that burden. I mean, it's very individualized, but I think that they need to become educated and they need to become their own advocate, and they need to make sure that they're getting the testing and, as frequently as they may need. Unfortunately, sometimes I think that a complication may cause someone to say, hey, maybe I should be doing something.
I was just thinking of that. I was thinking that one of the things you might say is, I'm not feeling that well, and I'd like to feel better.
That's another thing,
Yeah, and, I don't want to go blind, and I don't, could this get worse for me where I have to have a leg amputated? Or
Right.
So I think my motivation would be, if this happened, would be to want to feel good and be active.
I think that's great. And you know, the other thing, I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of people don't find out they have diabetes until they present with a complication. They may go to the eye doctor for an eye exam and they have bleeding in the back of their eyes, and that's retinopathy from diabetes. They may have hearing loss, because diabetes can cause hearing loss, and so they may go and have a hearing test, and they may go and they may have a heart attack, and they're in the emergency room and they draw blood work and they say, do you know you have diabetes? They could have kidney problems. They could develop numbness and tingling in their leg and go to the doctor, and that's a sign of neuropathy from diabetes. So a lot of times people have no idea they have diabetes until they have a problem. And then it's too late. They already have diabetes, they've already had damage to their blood vessels, and they've already had the chronic complications that come along with prolonged elevated blood sugar. And then a lot of times it's like a wake-up call. It's like, okay, maybe I need to, because they didn't know before, and then that's where you start educating people, sending them to a diabetes education program. Once they get diagnosed with diabetes, is awesome, because you have certified diabetes educators like myself who sit down one-on-one and in group settings and actually educate them on how to live with diabetes and what they can do to prevent those long-term complications. So there's a lot of things that can be done to help people with diabetes.
I'm beginning to think that I'm going to leave you and I'm going to go get tested.
That's not a bad idea, actually. If you're over 45, that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, I thought, age was the hearing problem, but now I'm concerned.
Well, I don't want to bring fear. I want to bring awareness to people, and really to take this seriously, because it really is serious.
Yes.
And, I read the statistics. It's serious, and people are unaware. And so I don't think fear is going to drive people to do this. I really hope that it's the awareness and just going and being proactive in your health. Just like any other area of your health and your life, you want to be proactive.
Right.
And you want to know your numbers.
Yeah.
Because diabetes and heart disease are related. You want to know what they call your ABCs of diabetes. A is your A1C, which is a 3-month blood test that you would go, and you don't have to fast. Your doctor draws it. It comes back as in a percentage. And that number and that percentage, if it's between 5.7 and 6.4, then you have prediabetes. If it's over 6.5, then you probably have diabetes.
Oh.
The B in the ABCs is blood pressure. Get your blood pressure under control. Have your blood pressure tested every time you go to the doctor. And if you're over 140, over 90, then you want to talk about lifestyle changes, watching your salt, maybe possibly medication. And then the C is cholesterol, and getting your cholesterol numbers under control, because heart disease and diabetes and stroke, they're all related.
Yeah, dear.
So
But there are foods that can help you
yes.
with the blood pressure, how to regulate it, and cholesterol.
Absolutely. And the best thing I can advise for all of us, this isn't just for people with diabetes. This is all of us. There's the 2015-2020 dietary guidelines. And it really is just a healthy way of eating. And it involves whole grains, fruits and vegetables, low-fat dairy. And you can buy a plate from choosemyplate.gov, and it literally shows you how to set up a healthy plate. If you go on the website, My Plate, My Wins, it sets a whole program. It comes up with a meal plan for you. You can put in information, and it really gives you so many helpful hints. So your plate should look like half of it fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter of it with a lean protein, and a quarter of it with a whole grain, some type of whole grain, and then your low-fat dairy. And if everyone eats like that, then they're going to decrease their risk of chronic disease, not just diabetes. In terms of diabetes specifically, the Diabetes Prevention Program showed the benefit of low-fat and healthy and all of those other things that I've talked about, but eating lower saturated or bad fat, the saturated and the trans fat, is the part of the diet that is really beneficial to lowering your risk of diabetes. And let's not forget the exercise, because it's not just what we eat, it's what we're doing to move our body. And really the diabetes prevention study showed 5 days a week, 30 minutes. And so we need to move our body. And we also, like, even things that we can do, take, you know, you've heard this a million times, take the stairs instead of the elevator, park your car further away, walk your dog. Those are really, really important ways to get physical activity. So we need to move our body, and we need to watch what we eat in terms of our fat, and just generally eating a healthy, you know, meal plan. This is not a diet. This is a lifestyle change. This is what we need to reverse our thinking. People think quick fix is going to change everything, but when you're talking about disease prevention, it's really lifestyle changes, and it's a lifelong process. So you start with small steps. That's really the important process.
This sounds like, probably when I go home today, I'll check everything that is on our plate and how much we put there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, but like I was telling you before, broccoli happens to be one of my favorites, so I'll just keep eating more broccoli.
Broccoli is great. Absolutely. Broccoli is a good choice.
One of the things that I wonder about is all the ads that are on television for, you know, many illnesses, but diabetes, for instance. And there's lots of different types of pills, and oh, you should take this, and you should take that. What do you think about that?
Well, there are algorithms for treating diabetes, but can I tell you that it's not a cookie cutter approach anymore? What they're saying in the standards of care is that it's individualized. The patient is the center. The patient is in charge of all of the decision making. It's a team approach. They really have a lot of impact. It's not you go to the doctor and they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Really, as a patient, you are right in the middle of that whole team. You have a team of diabetes. Lifestyle, number one, and sometimes including in that is maybe a diabetic pill, maybe insulin. It all depends on where you're at when you first get diagnosed. There's it includes, what are your resources? Can you afford different medications? Are you overweight already? Do we need a medication that's not going to cause you to gain weight? Do you have kidney problems? Do you have heart problems? Do you have a support system? Can you physically give yourself certain types of injectable medications or insulin? There's a lot of different variables. How long have you had diabetes? What's your age? All of these things come into play. So the bottom line is it's an individualized approach. So yes, there is a role for medications in diabetes management, but it's included lifestyle, and it's really patient-centered, and you have a whole team of people. You have a dietitian, you've got a diabetic nurse, you've got your specialties, your eye doctor, your kidney, your foot doctor, you've got your primary care physician, and you're in the center of all of the decisions getting made. Oh,
well, that's really great.
It is a good way to look at it, because you feel like you're more in charge of your life and what's happening. And that gives you a little, I think that empowers you. You know, I think it's good.
Well, we've covered a lot of things, but is there anything that we missed that you feel was important and needed to be mentioned?
Well, we've talked about lifestyles, we've talked about different medications, we've talked about risk factors, we've talked about the importance of screening and getting tested. We've talked about the diabetes prevention program. You're going to start seeing these programs come up. They're based upon the diabetes prevention program that I was telling you about in 97 through 99, and they're a year-long program. And you can, if you get diagnosed with prediabetes, you really want to, besides getting blood tested to confirm the diagnosis and make those healthy lifestyle changes, the diabetes program is a great program because it has facilitators and it has group support, and you're learning those intensive lifestyle changes that you need to make. And it's intensive for the first 6 months. It's once a week, and then the next 6 months is a couple of times a month or once a month, just to keep you on track, to help you lose the weight that the program has designated as the goal weight to prevent diabetes. My company also offers personal health coaching. I also speak in different areas, senior centers, adult community education programs, cable TV, Rotary. So I would love to be invited to come and speak and to really get the awareness and to get people educated on this problem.
Right. Well, it sounds good. And I think you've educated us a little bit today.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
I feel better. But I do want to say that, you know, there is really no cure for diabetes yet. But scientists are working on one, but the only way to manage diabetes now is to take insulin and medications as prescribed. Eat a balanced diet, get plenty of physical activity, and check your blood sugar levels regularly. And contact Diabetes Care Consulting to learn more. And there you can go to diabetescareconsulting@gmail.com, or you can call 508-864-5142. And so thank you, Sherry. Thank you so much. And I feel that I know a lot more, and I definitely will have my blood checked next time I go.
That's wonderful. Can I just add one thing about the insulin? Just because you have diabetes doesn't necessarily mean you have to be on insulin. There's other new medications as well. But if you do have to be on insulin, it is not a bad thing, because people think of insulin as a very bad thing, but your pancreas sometimes just gives out. And the only way to control your blood sugars is insulin. So it doesn't reflect that you're not doing the job that you need to do. It's just the process, because it's a chronic illness, and sometimes it's just the process of the continuing of diabetes. So I really want to emphasize that if you have to go on insulin, don't look at it as a bad thing. It's just part of the process. But you may not have to. But I just want to put that out there because I know a lot of patients are concerned about that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that.
Well, I'm glad you did. And I feel no matter what you have to do to take care of this, insulin, medication, exercise, whatever, do it.
Absolutely. Take diabetes seriously.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you again. I really enjoyed it, and I do feel that I know a lot more.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Littleton is offering rain barrels to residents. The Sustainability Committee and the Littleton Light and Water Department are coordinating to make rain barrels available for purchases for Littleton residents at a reduced cost. In recent years, New England has experienced drought conditions and extended dry periods which severely impact residents whose water usage can increase as much as 60% during the extended summer season. Rain barrels significantly offset that increase, saving homeowners money and helping the community manage water supplies. Rain barrels also reduce runoff. In watershed areas, runoff can harm existing water sources because storm sewers discharge polluted runoff. This burdens water treatment plants and can cause higher water prices. Homeowners who connect the barrels to their downspouts can save as much as 1,700 gallons in a season with a single barrel. Just keeping a small 10 by 10 garden irrigated during the summer months can mean using that amount of water. Each barrel comes with a spigot, overflow valve, hose, and mosquito screen. To purchase, please visit greatamericanrainbarrel.com and look for Shop Local programs in the left side of the bar, and find Littleton or call 800-251-2352. Barrels will be available for pickup on Saturday, April 22nd from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the front parking lot of the Littleton Light and Water Department's parking lot. Littleton Electric and Water is on 39 Air Road, Littleton, Mass. Meantime, stay well and don't forget to hug a senior. And most of all, don't forget we're here.